right now I am the reading specialist at Amity Elementary School. I specialize, very specialized in decoding for the kids who have decoding issues. Last year, we discovered that 66% of our kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth graders could not decode. So we knew because of COVID and other things, we had to make some major changes. So we spent a good part of the year working on that. So I am going to briefly kind of give you some ideas on how to do that. And I've created a Padlet at the end so that you can look at some of those things that we are using to see if they're helpful. If you let me know if
Diana, I'll let you know they said 10:30.
10:30.
Yes, that's
okay.
the time.
Awesome. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So this is the simple view of reading. I don't know if you've been exposed to this or not. They talk about it in college for a week or so, so I'm going to be really brief. But basically, my multiple, this is actually a mathematical equation, and I didn't notice that it doesn't quite show up. But word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So decoding times understanding what words mean means that they can make meaning. So if kids cannot decode and they don't understand the language and the vocabulary we're speaking, they cannot make any sense of what they read. If they are good word readers, which we have some of those, but they don't really understand what the words mean and they have a poor vocabulary, it's still a mathematical equation, 1 times 0, they're still not going to be able to make meaning. Or you can have kids who have really huge decoding issues, but really strong vocabulary and understand language, and they come across like they are really on the ball, but they still cannot make meaning. So that is just the basic overview of the simple view of reading. Are there any questions? This is Scarborough's reading rope. And it's just basically going over every single thing that you need to do to be a strong reader. All of these parts are tied together like a rope, and a good reader who can read, who can make meaning, has that rope tightly wound, and it's all working together. And the blue part on the bottom is that word recognition, like we just looked at. And then the language comprehension, understanding words, is that top part. My focus today and what we're going to work on is the blue part. But just think about that rope. And I actually have a little rope I've made at school with yarn. And I show this to the children so that they can see, oh, if you're missing this part, your rope is going to break. It's not going to work. And it's a good visual for them to see. So today we are going to focus on the blue part, which is phonological awareness, decoding, phonics, and your ability to recognize words. And a skilled reader does all of this automatically. So that is our goal, is we're trying to get them to be get automaticity. And if you have any difficulties with phonological awareness, you're going to have difficulties later on reading and understanding. Now, your wonderful faces are right where my quote from Kilpatrick is, but I'm sure basically he says, students with good phonological awareness become great readers, and if they can't do that, they are going to really struggle. And what we find is these kids have cognitive overload. It takes so much time for them to code every sound by sound that by the time they finish a sentence or a page, or in my case, one word, they've already forgotten it. I'm sure you've had kids that have gone, app, and then they say dog. And you're like, what is going on? But it's taken so much of their brain to do that. Or they've read the sentence and they can't even tell you what it is because it's taken so much cognitive work to decode every word in that sentence that they cannot tell you what it was about. So phonological awareness, I know I'm going pretty fast, but I want to give you the strategies most important. Phonological awareness is your ability to recognize and manipulate the spoken parts of words. That's, can you count how many words are in a sentence? Do you know what a syllable is? Can you count syllables? Can you tell me how many sounds are in a word? Can you rhyme? Do you recognize and hear an alliteration? That awareness is crucial for them learning how to read. It's their foundation, like my brick there. If they don't have it, if you don't have a good foundation on your house, it's just going to crumble. And so phonological awareness is that base on your house, and they have got to have it. Now, in phonological awareness, when you're doing this instruction, all of it is verbal. The kids aren't writing anything down. This is all verbal. So I'm going to show you some examples of what I do with my kids. And we go, as if you're familiar with Anita Archer, we go at a snappy, perky pace. And I will put these slides in the chat when I'm done. The one thing that I use, and I'm going to stop my slide for a moment. See if I can stop. All right, so I'm just going to give you some of the things that we do. This is from Haggerty, and I put this in the Padlet. But Haggerty is just phonological awareness, and they have a lot of different levels, pre-K, K, first, second, and it takes about 10 minutes of our day. And right now we are using it during transition times or when we have, a few minutes that we need to use. So there's a little part that you do every day, and so. Oh, the one thing I forgot to ask is, would you please put your grade level in the chat so that Valerie can make sure I'm hitting the appropriate grade. So let's just take 15 seconds and put your grade level in the chat, and then Valerie will help me with that. Sorry, I forgot about that.
We're on it. They're doing it for me already.
I forgot.
It's okay. I asked them in the chat.
Oh, good. I just don't want to miss one grade when I'm. So for Haggerty, there's word is sad, mad. You're going to go thumbs up if these words rhyme. Sad, mad. And you would immediately correct if they didn't get it. Boot, pig. And you'll have some kids who can't hear it. So I just go over that. That's the last sound that we hear. Run, fan. That's a little bit harder for them to hear. And then another, so there's some rhyming part. And then another part is we're going to work on the first sound of a word. So you are going to tell me, I'm going to say the word. And when I'm done, you are going to tell me the first sound that you hear. Bake. What is the first sound in bake? And I really, really work on not adding a to a sound. So if they go ba, I correct them and we go. We want to make them really crisp, because the kids who really struggle, then they're thinking that bell is ba, el, and then they're like, oh, Bella. So we really work on that. All right, jump. What is the first sound in jump? Right, jump. And then a next part is like syllables. So I am going to say a word very slowly. We're going to do 2-syllable words. I'm going to do one part, and then, oh, I'm backwards in the camera, aren't I? I'm just going backwards for the kids. Am I backwards? I want to make sure that I put my left hand out so that the kids see it, so they would be reading. I don't know what it does in the camera. I think it's a mirror image. All right, so napkin, napkin. What is the word together? Good. Play-doh. What's the word together? And then we go the opposite way. I say Play-doh, and you say, I say cupcake, and you say awesome. And then we do the last sound. So the word is duck. What's the last sound in duck? Good. And what's the last sound in plug? So, and I do immediate feedback. Yes, you did a great job, or let's practice this one. We didn't get that one. So this is Haggerty, and this is good for K1, 2. They do have some older one. And then Valerie, what are we primarily, which grades?
Well, I see about 6 first grade. We've got a 3rd grade, 5th grade. We've got learning specialist, reading specialist. So I think we need to hit all of them.
Okay.
I would say K through 6 if you could address that.
I got it. So the other thing I use is Equipped for Success by David Kilpatrick. Now, this is not the real book. This is just copies of my examples I use. And I use this, I have kids K through 5. I have the 4 kids who are struggling the most with decoding in each grade. And so I'm just going to go through some of the examples he has, and they're going to get harder and harder. So if they were like in 2nd grade, I would go, the word is cardboard. Say cardboard. Say cardboard without the card. Say, the next word is toolbox. Say toolbox without the box. And so you're just taking a compound word and you say the front, but they have to either figure out the front or the back. And then it gets a little harder. It's a 2-syllable word, but it is not a compound word. So the word is candy. Say candy without the can. Say nimble without the nim. Say ignore without the nor. And same thing, you're leaving off the front or the back. And in the Equipped for Success, they have all of it. So it's not like you have to make words up as you go. And then it gets a little bit harder and goes to 3 syllables. So flamingo without the fluff. And this is where my 3rd graders are right now. Vacation without the they. And so we just keep going on, and then it gets harder and harder. My kid's my 5th grader right now, and he is really having trouble with this. We're going to work on the middle sound. You have to leave out the middle sound. So driver without the, what is left? What's the word? Is that hard to figure out? Driver. You take off the and you have dryer. So you can see it gets harder and harder and harder. Last year, my 5th graders started at that beginning with cardboard, and they got up to the last part, which is super challenging. They have to do the word backwards by sound. So, for example, if the word was pipe gab, now if you could put it in the chat, if you can figure it out, the word is, this is a nonsense word, pipe gab, but you're going to say it backwards by sound. And I don't let them write it down. They have to do it in their head. But keep in mind, they've started at cardboard and they've worked up. So pipe gab. Anybody figure it out? Go for it, Allie.
Bagcape.
Bag what?
Bagcape.
Almost pipe, yes, bagpipe. But that's very challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really hard.
But remember, the kids who I had last year, they had me all the way through COVID 2 years, and then last year, so they started out with that cardboard, and they kept working up, and they don't need me this year, which is super exciting. They weren't too happy about it, but they're okay.
Diana, you have a raised hand.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I don't see that.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I could, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I have a question just about what setting you're using this program. Are you doing that whole group, or are you targeting by what skill they need for phonological awareness and doing that work in small groups?
I have done both. When I was in the classroom, I did it with the whole group. And then right now I am doing it targeted in small groups, but half of my day, I'm also the reading coach. And so I'm teaching the teachers how to do this with whole group. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, my district, or I guess my building, kind of adopted Haggerty last year, and we weren't really given that specific direction. So I think a lot of teachers were doing it whole group. And then this year I was trying to do it in small groups, and I was told, it's really not the point of Haggerty. You should be targeting phonological skill during that small group time.
And we do it both. We do whole group, and we do it, the kids who we notice aren't getting it, then we do it in small group. So we're doing both.
And Diana, can I interject?
Yes.
I'm a learning specialist, which means in my district, and it's really the special education teacher, K-5, and I use Haggerty in my special education small group. So it can be used anywhere that children need help, is my philosophy. Diana, would you agree?
Yeah, we use it when we line up. I mean, I've done it so long that as I walk my kids back, we're doing something wherever they are. But, that's after years of experience. The other thing we use this year, we spent all year last year trying to figure out what we were going to do, realizing we had a phonics and phonological, and that Haggerty after 3 years wasn't taking care of it. So we are also this year, after a lot of work, using UFly, which we are so excited about. And UFly does some of this every day too. And they just do a segmenting and blending. So let me give you an example of that. So if you were like kindergarten mid-year, I'm going to stretch out a word. And when I'm done, you have to tell me what the word is. And they know this is a stretch. And when I clap, they're supposed to say it. So the word is fish. And they would say fish. And then I would do 2 or 3 more. And then I say the word, a different word, fast, and they have to stretch it. So the word is brush. And they would go brush. And on UFly, it's based on whatever sound they have learned. And if they were, for example, at the end of 2nd grade, then it might be, I would say, lovable. And then they would have to put the whole word together and say lovable. And they're working on ABLE. And I would say teachable, and they would have to stretch it all the way out. Okay. All of the resources I have put in the Padlet, which I will put in the chat for you. And I might keep adding. The other thing I do every day with my kids is I have word cards, sound cards, and whatever sound they are on, we just do about 15 a day, and I show it to them, and they have to tell me. This says ch, and we have some hand signals for all of them. And we just go through every day as fast as we can and do this so that they know. And I have a set of cards for each group. Otherwise, I'd be shuffling cards my entire day. So they know they have that, they do that. Let me get back. Ooh, how am I doing? Good. Let's see. So those are some examples of just phonological awareness. Everything is verbal. Was there any questions?
Diana, they're asking where can they find these resources. And I can tell you, Heggerty and Equipped for Success are on Amazon. I am not sure about the ULVI.
You fly, no, but I've made a
Oh,
Padlet and I'll put it in the chat when I'm done.
Thank you so much.
Got to copy it. So then, let's see, does it go forward? We're going to skip. So these are like my sound cards that I would use, and you see it gets harder. We're going to vowel teams, which then we're going to diphthongs, which are those vowel teams that don't make sense to kids. Okay, now we're going to move on to phonics. So the difference between phonics and phonological awareness is phonics is they have to take that sound and they've got to apply it in writing. They've got to be able to correlate that sound with those letters and put it in writing so they can break that code. And they've got to be able to do that in order to read. For phonics, it's got to go in a sequence. And it's got to be very, very explicit. And I use the basic sequence I use is in the kindergarten, it's very particular, the letters I do in order, but I do the letters. So I do consonants and vowels, and then we move on to digraphs, and then we move on to long vowels, then we move on to diphthong, then we move on to silent letters, and so on. And what I have found, because there's always a lot of questions, because you notice I didn't say blends, did I? Is I do not teach BR as a blend. I teach those separately, and because we are always blending, and the people from UFly and the people who are studying the science of reading said it's better to teach it separately so that the kids can hear each sound. You'll notice a lot of times you ask a kid to write train and they add a CH, a lot of DRs, they put CH and SH where it doesn't belong. So what I do for this is, again, I'm going to use these sound cards, but they don't get to see them at all. I say the sound, and then they have to write it. I use my basic supplies that I use are whiteboard and marker and some magnetic letter trays, which I wish I brought home, but I forgot. And so now I would go through about 10 to 15 sounds, whatever sounds we've been practicing. And I would say the sound is shh, write shh on your whiteboard. And I'm really particular about letter formation because they have found that ties to mapping those letters in your brain so you can read them, and makes better writers because they can write fluently instead of going upside down. You know how they do. So we do about 10 of those every day, just practicing them. And then the other thing we do, whoops, I lost my phonics page, is what I call word chains. Or if you are familiar with reading simplified, she calls them switch it. And we do these on their whiteboards. And so, for example, if you were a kindergartner, you would write the word web on your whiteboard. Okay. And I go, and I do this, web. So and then we go, how many sounds? 3 sounds. How many letters? 3 letters. And they write web. And then we say, you are going to make one sound change, and you are going to change it to wed. I can't think of a sentence. I was wed. Wed. And then they're going to just erase. And I have a B and D poster up there to help kids. And I also teach kids B-hand, which you can find on Reading Rockets, because kids who have reversals, this just makes no sense to them, because they're actually studying that kids with severe dyslexia are seeing more in 3D. So it doesn't matter. That's all the same. So I have some posters on the wall with a big B and a little b and a big D and P and Q and sometimes H and N to help the kids with that. So we go wed to fed, we go fed to led, then we go led to lid. So I'm constant at the beginning. I might be just changing the beginning sound. Then I might be changing the end. And as they get better, we change the middle. Now, if they were, let's say they were in the beginning of first grade and they were doing, they seem like they're on the ball. We're about where we're supposed to be. We might do bent and change that to sent. Change that to lent, change that to lent. And I do about 10 of these. We just change them. And I always make sure that they can understand, explain what that word means. If they were even older, I would make the sound changes even harder. So we might start with boat, and then we would change it to boast. And then we would make 2 sound changes and change it to burst. And I always tell them if they're struggling, like how many sound changes they are. And it just depends where they are on which word change. And You Fly has all the word changes for me, which makes my life, I don't have to make them up anymore like I did for years. So are there any questions on word change?
Diana, there's a question. Are your small groups skill-based regardless of age, or do you do small groups within each grade band? How many are in each of your small groups and how long for each?
Okay, so my groups, I'm tier 3. And I work with the title teacher tier 2. All of our tier 2 and tier 3 groups are skill-based. And no group is bigger than 5 per title. And none of my groups can never be bigger than 4. And they go for 30 minutes 4 times a day because we are let me try that again. 30 minutes 4 times a week because we are a 4-day school week. Did I hit all those? The other thing I do with phonics is I do a dictation. So whatever words and sounds we are working on, I do a sentence. So if they were working on just learning their CVC and they were practicing, the sentence is all something they should know. And the sight words, I'll teach you that part next. So they might have to write, Sam sat on the mat. And I would go, Sam sat on the mat. And then I would say, Sam sat. And the kids would say, repeat, Sam sat on the mat. Sam sat on the mat. And they repeat, and then they say it. And then I make them touch their whiteboard and tap it. And they go, Sam sat on the mat. And I make that, and I said, and when you're ready, they write it down. So my goal by doing that like 5 times is I don't have to go repeat that sentence over and over and over and over. I just did this with 3rd graders and there were 20 of them in there. So they did it. And then when they're done, we call it cups. Check your cups. Did you remember your capitalization? U is understanding. Does your sentence make sense and can we read it? P is punctuation. Did you remember what goes at the end of your sentence? And S is your spelling. Now in these sentences I give them, they're all sounds that they have learned already. So they should be able to spell them. Questions about that?
Diana, you have 11 minutes.
I know. I'm like, how do I do this every day? The other thing we do is we practice words, reading those decodable words, and we practice reading decodable text. Now, decodable text, when you first start with sounds, are not very exciting. That's okay. We're just trying to read. apply our skills so that we can later read something a little more exciting that makes sense. That's what read alouds and all the other good stuff during the day is for to help make meaning. We're just trying to learn to read. All right, let me go forward. Oops, I'm stuck. Okay, irregular words. I'll try to make this not confusing. Irregular words are words that cannot be decoded, like the word said or the word the. We cannot decode those words at all. There's also words that we could call temporarily, and that's that the kid has not learned the sound yet. Like kindergartners see the word name all the time. It's on their paper every day. So they need to learn that word, but they haven't learned all those sounds yet. So I used what we call the heart word technique. And this is how I would teach the word said. And I would have all the blue and heart. I would just have the word said up there to start. And so what I go is, this is the word said. I don't have any guessing at all, because if you have guessing, then some kid's going to learn it wrong. So this is the word said. And then I'll go over the sounds they already know. And on my screen, the square would pop up blue under S. S says, we all know S says, now this is like kindergarten, first grade. And the D is also blue, and they know blue means we know the sound. It says duh. And then I teach them the heart part, which is the part we have to learn to memorize, learn by heart, which we learned a lot of our kids have never heard that. So we had to teach them. And we teach them that in this case, AI is very naughty. And it says, it says, it says, what does it say? So the word is, what's the word? Said. And then it's really important that the kids can spell the words as well as read, because you read slightly better than you can spell. So I do 3 different things, 3 ways, 3 times to cement this in their head. We try to do things that go across. So we might do, and I do it on their knee, but S-A-I-D, said. And they do that 3 times, and then we might go down the arm. S-A-I-D, said. And then we might do jumping jack. S-A-I-D, said. And we do that, like I said, 3 different ways, 3 times, and then I have them write the word on their whiteboard. And we do that consistently until that is stuck, mapped in their head that they've got it. It's kind of funny to watch them when they read it or when they spell it, whatever works best for them. And they're struggling, you'll watch them. They'll be sitting there going like this, or tapping their arm, or whatever it takes for them to remember how to do that. So that's how I teach the irregular words. I don't flashing them over and over. They're not keeping them in their head very long, which I'm sure from experience you have seen that. So the next one, let's see, I'm going to go forward. I guess it takes a moment. So this is an older, once they've got other sounds, so you can see at this point, the kids have learned long E says E, they already know N says N, but they have to learn that OU, and this time it's going to say and the GH is going to say the sound. And so that is how I would do it. I put the blue under the sounds they already know, and I put the heart under the part of the word that they is breaking the rules, or in this case, GH, they have not, or maybe they haven't learned it yet, because sometimes GH does do that. Is there any question about that? And I try to do at least 2 sight words a day that way. And then we always go back and review. And once they've got them, then I move on, because they've got them. I don't keep practicing if they've got them. So after we've done all these things, we practice with decodables, and the decodables are only based on the sounds they've learned, the sight words they've learned. We do sentences that are decodable. I cut them up in sentence pieces and make them put them back together in order. And I also use some text so that they can practice. And we do this by me reading it to them. We echo read. We read it together. I read and they read it right after me. They go read it with a buddy. And then eventually they read it independently or independently. And then I check on them to see how they're doing. And like I said, some of them aren't very exciting. So in this case, we would be practicing long A words. And I provide immediate feedback and I provide, fix any mistakes they might make. In this case, we would be practicing EY at the end, saying E. And I would make sure that they know when we do this one, or any of them, they use their hands in some way to show me that they know this is cake or this is plate or shake. So they're always looking kind of funny because they're always, moving around, being a little monkey or a turkey, or they got money down. So I always want to make sure. And if I see a lot of kids not understanding, I immediately stop and give a brief explanation of what that word means. This would be a decodable sentence for kindergarten, first grade, and we would read it. I would read it. We would read it together. Practice it at least 5 times. This would be a little bit older. We're working on vowel teams, long vowels, and then this one is working more on those sounds that are irregular, like CH saying chef and rains right there. And these are all in my Padlet that I'll share. There's some in the RADS Kids Plus, there's some decodables, dog on a log, and Costco sometimes has those pretty cheap. I use the ones from Spire. Haggerty has some great ones once they get, and they're so pretty. The colors are just amazing, but this is for very little. Beginning sounds. My 3rd graders did this one last year and they were just so happy that they could read it, but I love the color. It makes it more inviting. Most of the texts I use do not have pictures, and the reason for that is to prevent the kids from relying on pictures. The Literacy Nest lady does a lot of decodables. You can find a lot of and those don't have pictures. IMSC, which is at Orton Gillingham, does not have pictures either. And then these great little books from Phonics Books, they go all the way from pre-readers with just pictures, all the way up to this would be working on blends at the end. I cannot mend. I can't read backwards and upside down in a mirror. So we use a lot of these just to practice. The other thing I do a lot is I use a lot of games. A lot of times I notice my kids are just cognitively overloaded and I take like 2 minutes and I just stop and we play a game. I use Spot It because it's working on that automaticity, like being able to get things named quickly. I use the old-fashioned memory where you turn them upside down. They either have to match the sound or they have to match the word. I probably only use, depends on the group, 10 to 20 cards. I have a lot of card games that are based on sounds that you play, like Uno. I play Candyland and Chutes and Ladders, but to get your turn, you either have to read a card that tells me you can read that decodable word or that sight word, or you can tell me the sound. I do the same thing like with Chutes and Ladders or Jenga. To get their turn, they have to be able to read that sound or spell that word. And I do that quite a bit with them. If they work really hard, they get to do that. Basic things are whiteboards, markers, and this is This is not my magnetic tray, but I left it at home. But we use these a lot. And then at the bottom, it has a line for word building. So when we do that word chain and we're going mat to fat, they just bring the M, they put it down. And it's amazing to watch them just how they're thinking to get that, ooh, mat, bat, and that they find the B and they get it down. We have about 300 magnetic trays from the dollar store. Oh, good, it's there. So, wow, I did that in 10 seconds. I have left. There is my Padlet. If you have any, contact me.